think I was a bit too emotionally invested in a statement performance from the Springboks at Ellis Park. I was most disappointed with that result. Rather angry as well. Laptop crashed. It was a nightmare to file. I think my analysis was as shocking as the Bok performance. Apologies for that. Bit more calmer in the week now. Electricity's working. We've said it all along, Zels. It's the preamble to the World Cup. What does it really mean in the context of the World Cup? But after the disappointment of the All Black game in Auckland, did you expect a better performance from that Springbok setup?
Absolutely. And I thought I think you were warranted in your reaction. I think your reaction was on point. It was a diabolical performance. It reminded me of Rassie's predecessor, how the Boks played there. And I was greatly disappointed. And I think the Boks were obviously disappointed as well. Never has a victory tasted like defeat quite like that match. And we looked like we were completely just nowhere, shell-shocked, flat, tactically bereft of execution. I don't know. I was disappointed pretty much from start to finish in that. So if we're not supposed to read anything into World Cup warm-up matches, then maybe we shouldn't be talking about it. But if the Boks want to be on the radar, they need to maybe do a little bit more homework and get the job done on a Saturday, because that was far from good enough, and I think they'll probably have even higher standards than what you and I set for them.
Well, I mean, Rassie and Jock, we keep on saying it, free ride, and they've had a free reign pretty much since they started, because they had this World Cup plan and they went and won the World Cup. And most people say they're World Cup winning coaches. Don't question them. They've won 9 out of 16 in the last year. Lost games that you think, how have they lost those games? They've lost to all the big teams. And the response every time from the South African public is, it's part of the master plan. Now, when does a victory become part of the master plan leading into the World Cup?
Spot on.
If I go back to 2019, the one thing the Boks had in 2019 had great momentum going into the build-up to the World Cup. Good win at home against Australia. Got the last minute 16-all in a very good test in Wellington against the All Blacks. And then went to Argentina and smashed them and won the Rugby Championship. That gave us quite a boost. Went over and played Japan, got there early, beat them comfortably, took that 2015 World Cup monkey off our back. And by the time we played them in a quarterfinal, we were very content that we could comfortably beat them. And then they progressed well throughout that World Cup. But you always found in 2019, well, my sense was they were building pressure and building momentum. And here there just doesn't seem to be any momentum built. It's stop-start. And I look at a side like New Zealand, and they seem to be showing signs of that re-energized youthfulness and kind of something dynamic that we were showing 4 years ago. You know, I've been arguing and defending the side, saying they're not too old, they're not too tired, but my goodness, they looked that at Ellis Park, and I really just thought they would come out and, at least for 40 minutes, put on their marker and say, don't write us off just yet. We are still comfortably up there with the best.
There's a feeling to this team now. It's almost like when Rassie took over in 2018. It's almost become a situation where it's an ambulance job again, because there's just no momentum in anything. And Jacques, after the match, was talking about the lack of cohesion because they've made so many changes, and he promised to rectify it before the World Cup. And then he picked a completely overhauled team again this week to play Argentina. So they play Wales, then they play the All Blacks in a allegedly must-win game, and then it's the World Cup. So there is no time to create that cohesion now. They have effectively destroyed whatever cohesion they had. Obviously, it'll come if they play the same team now throughout the World Cup pool stages, hypothetically. They can rebuild that momentum. But again, I keep asking this question, why have we put ourselves in this position? We've had, call it 3 years to prepare for this World Cup. Do we want to win a World Cup? Absolutely. But does that warrant getting smashed and having these up and down roller coaster matches for the 3 years that we've endured now? I mean, yes, Nick Mallett didn't win a World Cup, but he won 17 in a row with the Boks. There's got to be some continuity with. You can't just sacrifice Springbok Test matches every time and sort of throw it away in the name of developing for a World Cup, I think.
Well, no, and I agree totally with you in terms of only one team can win the World Cup. And it could come down to a red card in the 75th minute. And then what? Does it put the 3-4 years into context and say it's okay? No, it doesn't. So we've always prided ourselves in wanting to win Test matches as one of the superpowers of world rugby. The belief is that we win many more than we actually do. Our win percentage is 62%, so I keep on saying it. That's 38% of the time we don't win. And 9 out of 16, you do the numbers. that's not kind of the form of a world champion team. And I just feel that so much charity is being given to the squad because of the belief that they'll go in and win the World Cup. And then again, you know, even if they did, does it make the pain of every Saturday worthwhile?
Spot on.
Then why are we investing in the Springboks? Why are we paying good money to go watch test match rugby? If it's like, hey, if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. It's part of the big plan. Then should not in World Cup year, specifically, should the 6 internationals that you play in the build-up to the World Cup not be as a SA 15 against New Zealand 15, no test caps given, and you can experiment as much as you want, and it's not the Springboks going down at Ellis Park or getting smashed in Auckland. It's a South African 15, and the national coach is not giving away caps, and they're playing with things. Because if I look at the way this rugby championship has unfolded, there was such enthusiasm and optimism, especially from me, after that wonderful win at Loftus, and I thought they picked a very balanced and good side. Admittedly, against an Australian side, they didn't really produce much.
Yes.
But then the master plan of sending 12, 13 guys to New Zealand 10 days before, and then some of them didn't even feature in the match. And then coming back, and really I thought we got it. It was an eye-opening 20 minutes against the All Blacks. The intensity that they played with and the way they smashed us. Yes, we came back into that game. Weren't good enough, though, to finish it. And then when I look at Jacques' response after that game, and he's like, it's not how they wanted to go, but they'll take the head-out session, the defense session. Now, if people going to Ellis Park knew they were going to watch the Boks do a defensive practice session, and you know, knowing these guys, it all goes well at the World Cup, they'll come out and say that was premeditated, it was planned, they wanted to tackle for 60 minutes. I don't know so much. I just don't think Argentina were good enough to win it. But to me, it's like, we love the Boks. We love to support them. We want what's best for them. We believe in this group of players. And I just felt over the weekend, hang on a second, am I going down a blind alley because I've got the blinkers on because I believe too much in these guys and we're not questioning enough? Because if they had played the reserve depth, the second tier players in all 3 rugby championship games, with a sprinkling of the 2019 World Cup side, then I would have said, you know what, they are building that second tier for the World Cup, and I appreciate that.
Spot on.
But they went from playing their kind of mixed best to their best to another mixed best to 13 changes to go to Buenos Aires, and it will be a tough ask for that squad who's never played together as a collective to go and beat an Argentinian side who got a whiff, and will feel that this will be a great one for their record books to knock us over.
But I mean, isn't that exactly the case? Is that they keep rolling the dice here? They keep buying this charity by winning when they need to. They beat the British and Irish line. You know, they find ways to win when it's on the line. The problem with that strategy is when you get it wrong, like they did in Auckland, then that charity starts to just disappear because we over-prepared in a way for that All Blacks test by sending those guys ahead, and it was all about winning that match. We got blown away, and then now it's kind of panic stations. So whatever the strategy is, it's created doubt and a lack of confidence generally from, I would say, elements of the media and definitely, Joe Public.
Well, I thought Dylan Jack on SA Rugby Magazine wrote a very insightful column about, and you kept on speaking about on the fly, he looked at the hookers. Now, we know Marks and Bongi are the top 2, Bongi and Marks, whichever way you want to look at it, but has there been enough over 4 years investment in the third hooker? And it's a position where a hooker can go down quite comfortably. Has there been enough development for a third scrum off, and then has there been enough development for a third fly off? And if you look in the context of the 3 years, there really hasn't.
No.
You're nodding.
But that's exactly right, though. If Russia had taken over this team 6 months ago, I'd say this all makes sense. We are trying to patch this team up, but they won the last World Cup. He said at the time that was the team that he'd actually picked to win the next World Cup. In a way, winning that 2019 World Cup was a bonus. But there's been absolutely no development. Yes, we've tried 1 or 2 players here and there, but we're on the eve of the World Cup and there's confusion around multiple positions. I see Trevor Nyakane is now back at loosehead. Thomas du Toit's back at tight head. If you look at those guys, it's been like spin the bottle. We're not sure who the backup is behind Frans Malherbe, arguably the most critical position in the pack. Who's the guy that steps in behind him? Vincent Koch hasn't started a match in 100 years. So what are we doing there? Like I say, they've just sown confusion unnecessarily. They've had time. Time hasn't been the problem. And now we're sort of scrambling to get everyone there 200 minutes before the World Cup. It's madness.
So if you look at the end of your tour last year, when they played against the the two favourites, Ireland, France. It was a 4-point game in Marseille. It could have gone either way. 3-point game in Dublin. It could have gone either way. And they really put on a very good show in the last 42 to knock over England. Then that opening game against Australia. Do you feel the last two matches have been a slight regression?
Massive.
Or that it's kind of they're comfortable that they'll keep on repeating their same storyline, that they know who their best 23 is, they know what they need to do to win big games, and they'll do that. And is that good enough for the South African public? And do we have to accept it in this modern age where apparently it's just about the World Cup and nothing else?
Yeah, look, it definitely isn't good enough in my books. Every time you put on the Bok jersey, you should be trying to win matches, and everybody involved should be doing their best to do that. I'm not saying you should never take chances that sometimes blow up in your face, but there's a big difference between being a mad scientist and, playing a loose-headed fly-off and having a calculated risk in, okay, let's give this guy an opportunity to perform. We're investing in him for the future. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Rassie and Jacques are great coaches who can turn things around and win the World Cup, and I have absolutely no doubt that we have the cattle to go win a World Cup. I'm just pointing out that we've put ourselves in a position of doubt completely unnecessarily. We could have gone into this World Cup strong, with momentum, having spent the last 3 years creating depth in multiple positions. And I think one of the spin-offs of not doing that is there's complacency. I think there are lots of guys in this team who, when Rassie said that this is the team for 2 World Cups, took it to heart. They've created no competition where guys feel like their jobs are on the line. We don't know who's behind Willie Leroux at fullback. We don't know who was behind Handré. Elton was a bit of a disaster. We let Morné Steyn, arguably the greatest fly-off in the modern Bok era, retire. I guess he was a bit disillusioned. And now we're in a situation where we're playing Manie Libbok in his first test season, or his first couple of test starts, and Damian Willemse is the kind of limbo man. So, I have no doubt that we can turn this thing around. I just feel like we've created doubt around the team unnecessarily.
And again, we look at, just talking positions, Damien Deolandi, without a doubt, the last 5 years been the best inside centre in South Africa, one of the best in the world. Should this not have been a rugby championship where Andre the Giant was thrust for 3 tests and said, Deolandi is going to start. He'll play those 2 warm-up games. We're getting back from Japan now. Let him rest a bit, kind of let him peak through the World Cup. But now if Damien does go down at any stage, is it Damian Willemse that starts in at 12? Is it Andre Pollard that goes to 12? Because Andre the Giant has had 1 game, and people are saying, but it was Australia, they weren't that good. And now he goes in a mix and match team to Buenos Aires, and there's a good chance that they may struggle for cohesion. They may struggle with a passionate home crowd. And it has the makings for me of being very much like Wales against South Africa in Bloemfontein, where individually that 23 are all very good players.
Yes, agreed.
And if they played together for 4 or 5 matches, they would find a cohesion.
Yes.
But I would be very surprised if they went out on the weekend and put in a cohesive performance against a very settled Argentinian team.
Yeah, and it's a simple game, rugby. It's not hell of a complicated. And I think when you veer away from what you plan to do at the World Cup and you play a different way, which is how the Boks have been tackling 2023 so far, you create a grey area there, And so Faf's overkicked box kick that ended up in the try for Argentina. That came out after a lot of sexy rugby from the Boks this season. Where are that? Is everybody on the same page? When last did you actually execute your game plan that you plan on using at this World Cup? When are you going to start doing that? And a guy like Andre Estes, his last taste of the Bok scene was in a very momentum on tap against the Wallabies. So that's not going to be available at the World Cup. And how does that affect how everybody else performs? Just a lot of head scratching, mate. A lot of head scratching.
And if you look at the combination that he's picked to play against Argentina, what does that tell you about their thinking? And is it basically game time for the guys who are on the fringes? We know our 33 we take, and it's got nothing to do with performance. Because if you didn't know the 33, you haven't really given other players time to break down the door and show that they're in form. Dion Fourie hasn't played. Evan Roos hasn't played for whatever reasons. Jean-Luc gets his first game in 5 years in the Boks setup. He's been in and out. I keep on going back to Andre the Giant. Esterhuizen, and they said this is his season to show us, but he's played 1 game. Billy's started all 3 at fullback. We know what we got in Billy. We know he's going to start. It's kind of like...
But even look at
The why.
even look at the combinations, though, right? So last week it was the finesse, it was the skills guys, it was the speed monsters, right? We had Cal A, we had Cheslin, and we had Villy. This week we've gone with our most physical back three. So we're going to go to Buenos Aires to play Argentina with our most physical back three. Last week we played the most finesse, and at the World Cup there'll probably be a mix of it. So what do you gain out of doing that? What is the reward for what they're doing now? If it's just about minutes, then have an internal trial match and don't subject us to it.
Well, don't have officially capped test matches.
Bingo.
I think it does a disservice to the competition, does a disservice to kind of international rugby, and I'm not talking just specifically the Springboks. Talking all these games that are going on now. You've got Ireland playing, you've got Scotland playing, warm-up games, you've got France playing, and they play mix and match combinations, and it's all in the guise of the World Cup. And it brings me back to after this game, we've got Wales and we've got the All Blacks, and again, that's a money spinner, 80,000 at Twickenham. Why all of a sudden has this become a must-win game to take us into the World Cup? What happens if we don't win that game? Do we start saying, well, I don't know if we can beat them in the quarterfinals or the finals, because now we haven't beaten them for three matches.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of kind of, I don't know, there's a lot of confusion for me watching it. And as much as I try and see the rationale and try and see the science behind it, I'm just starting to think more and more, maybe kind of they've reached a plateau. So you look at certain players and you think, on that name, I'm picking that person. But would I pick them on form? Because you go back to that opening game against Australia when people said a B side, half an A side, half a B side. But they performed in a way with freshness and authority and kind of played a style that was very similar to how the Stormers have played. And they got good results against Australia.
But think about the guys who are performing. It's the guys whose positions are the least comfortable. Dwayne is suddenly, after being told he's got 5 tests left, he was the Bok captain. Peter Steph du Toit, who people written off as now he's past it, he comes back and delivers some great rugby again. It's all the guys who, it's coaching 101. It's the guys who weren't 100% assured of their positions that seem to be performing.
If you look at what you've seen in the Rugby Championship, now we said pre the Rugby Championship, the side that will play Ireland at the World Cup, all things considered, won't differ much from the side that played the 2019 World Cup final, the 23. Take away Beast and Francois Louw's retirements.
Yeah.
And Frans Steyn obviously not been available through injury, and then his retirement. Has anything altered in your mindset watching these 3 tests? Do you think some guys have gone ahead of other guys, whether it will be acknowledged or not? Or I think maybe some guys have reached the end?
Sure, that's a tough one to answer. I mean, I think there were times last year where Lurt was great and played some great footy. And then he's come back and taken a bit of a knock. Erkes Neyman's come back in the mix, and it's opened up some questions about what's the best combination for the second row. As you know, Erkes is obviously central to that bomb squad story. For me, it's not so much about which players are over it and have maybe been overtaken. It's just the what's been taken away from that bomb squad. The loss of Frans Steyn for me is massive as it impacts goal kicking. Andre Pollard, we don't know where he is. Like, the guy needs to get back on the field. We need to see him play. That's a huge piece of the puzzle.
And even coming back from an injury like he has, and he's really suffered with injuries between World Cups, unfortunately. There's no guarantee he's going to be on form or he's going to actually last 40 minutes.
Yeah, so if I say to you, he comes back, he's 100% in form, you sleep well tonight, right? But if I say to you, look, I'm not actually sure, he could come back cold and his goal kicking's off, that changes everything.
You know, that's one of the things that a lot of teams have learned. You go back to 1995 when the Wallabies arrived at the World Cup and they were the champions. They had a lot of injured players in the squad. If you look consistently at very good teams that are either defending a World Cup or seen as top 3-4 contenders, and they've taken injured players to the World Cup, it's come back and bit them in the arse. Because you don't get a guy conditioned and fit at a World Cup.
Exactly.
You can play a guy into form over 5 matches. And that pressure is on the whole time. So, I mean, I think the word is pissed off watching that game on Saturday night.
Very much so.
And as I said, very emotional, and maybe emotionally too invested, but I really do care about the Boks. And kind of a little bit tired of being fed the same old
line.
The same old line of wait and judge us in the World Cup. Because if that's the case, and I mean, and you're getting it from Eddie as well, mate, these are just hit and bust games, you know?
But I mean, in Eddie's defense, he has just taken over that team. you can kind of swallow that pill, right? These guys have been together since 2018. It's 5 years down the road. Jean-Luc Duprier is going to be
6th year.
Is going to be playing his first test in 5 years this weekend.
So if you look at the 4 teams, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, a summary of the Rugby Championship, where would they all be positioned?
Yeah, look, it was disappointing. You spoke about the All Blacks resurgence. That's a massive red flag. They're looking good. They've got depth. Scotty Barrett.
It's changed your view, eh?
Completely blown my view out the water. Playing the best rugby. Still got time for a bit of banter with Nick White.
And a great hit on Tate McDermott.
Just swallowed Tate McDermott. Monster sack, which was fantastic. Definitely looking good. The All Blacks are definitely on the rise. Australia remains a wild card because they can switch things on. They do have some good players in key positions.
And a comfortable World Cup draw.
And mate, Argentina for me are massive dark horses because Cheika's a street fighter. He's got a team full of street fighters. Those muchachos, their backline, they bullied our backs. It was like men against boys. There certainly was edge from their side of the field. And we didn't really know how to respond to that. And I think Yapi Mulder would have thrived in a game like that. And so I think we need to find our inner Yapi Mulder in the back line, yeah? And Oaks need to step up and man up and freaking get back to playing some test match rugby.
Well, I mean, that inner guy is Damien Dialandi. And
spot on.
And they got him right for 2019. He went through a patch before that. Rassie spoke about finding the dog in him again, which he did. And then he went on a great run. So, like you say, those players have shown they can do it in the past. Where would your concern be around any of those players heading into this World Cup?
Yeah, so we've spoken about it. The fitness and form of Andre Pollard. The slickness of Faf at 9. Can he get back to doing what he was doing before with the same intensity and efficiency? Our kicking game just in general, the kick, the chase. Cheslin's the guy who's playing some good rugby at the moment. Lukhanyo it's a fitness question. Damien Dialandi looks like he just needs more minutes. He's a guy who needs to kind of play his way back to where he was before. I'm still not convinced about Jasper at 8, and I think Dwayne is, from a leadership perspective and from an experience point of view, is a fantastic option there. What are we doing with Siya Kolisi? Is he going to be ready? And even if he's physically ready, form-wise, where is he going to be? Even Etzebeth is a blue chip player, regardless. That guy performs week in and week out, fantastic. Francois Haber, arguably our most valuable player. I think Malcolm Marx and Bongi Mbanabi, 2 best hookers in the world as a combination. I love Bongi captaining. I think it should have happened long ago. I think he's a guy everybody respects. I can understand why he hasn't because of the pressure from Marx for competition for position. And then Kitshoff, also literally worth his weight in gold. If everybody switches on and plays to their ability, we're in a great space. But the question again is what happens if they don't and who's the next man up?
And then psychologically, because you just spoken them up to win the World Cup.
Yeah.
They're a fantastic team.
They are.
Best in the world in every position. Coaches talk about a winning habit and momentum. And Ian Foster's been saying that, Jason Ryan's been saying that, Joe Smith doesn't say much, but you can see he's
thinking it.
He's thinking it. Is slowly these guys are building confidence. They believe in they can scrum, they can maul, they can dominate the collision. But any team and sport has shown that time and again how quickly a player, no matter how good that player is, can lose confidence.
Big time.
And lost against New Zealand, felt like a loss at home against Argentina, potential of getting knocked over in Buenos Aires, and then all of a sudden he's hang on a second, but we're in a good space, and then we lose one against New Zealand, or we struggle against Wales, and we go into that World Cup desperados, but not informed desperados.
Bingo.
Is that not the counterbalance to what they've been saying all the time?
Absolutely, 100%. So, yeah, to be experienced but aging and carrying injuries and not informed going into a World Cup is potentially a deadly cocktail.
And we've always seen with teams that are very good, that have won a World Cup, they're going to defend the World Cup. And we take some heart from the All Blacks in 2015 because Richie McCaw was written off. The mighty Macau came back and did it. Dan Carter, they weren't going to take him. The pressure was on to pick Sopahaga. He came to Ellis Park, had a great test. The All Blacks won it. And then they gave Carter the last test against the Wallabies at Eden Park. And Ian Foster said to him as the backline coach then, go out and play the Dan Carter way from when you started. And he just relaxed. played a great game, but they strapped his knee up all World Cup, and he came through for them. And that experience was very important. But collectively, they had a very good mix of youth and experience.
Yes.
Where this side has by and large been the same side, and so while they're not necessarily old statistically, you could argue that they're old in terms of a cycle of a team.
Absolutely. And we're talking about how this is an old team that's carried over from the last World Cup, but in the same breath, he's saying they lack cohesion. What are we talking about? How?
Well, are we not talking about that second tier depth that we've seen the individuals identify, but we've never really seen them play as a team? And I think my biggest criticism would be, if we go back to the Wales series last year, is I would like to have seen a more, that's the A side, and that is kind of like the B side as such, but they get game time together.
Absolutely.
And they're good enough to knock teams over. So it's a bit like looking at a Sharks team and a Stormers team.
Absolutely.
And saying it's a 50-50 call on any given day.
Absolutely.
But when I look at the side they've picked to go play against the Argentinians, it reminds me of, if you look at the 4 traditional South African franchises and said if they were going over to play the Jaguares, I would say it's the Lions going over. It's not the Sharks, it's not the Bulls, and it's not the Stormers.
Yeah, that's a great call.
It's not to say the Lions could have knocked them over,
sure,
but invariably they didn't.
Yeah, you're not putting your money on it.
Yeah, so I just find if the Pumas are going to ever have a chance of having a very good win against the Boks, it's going to be this weekend. And in fact, I'm actually betting them to win by 10 points.
But let's say they don't.
And I haven't bet against the Boks in 16 test matches, but they've lost 7 of them.
Let's say they don't, though, and the Boks smash them. How does that actually change anything? Because none of those guys are the
Well, that's the whole thing again. Then does that put doubt into
you see what I'm saying?
the coach's mind, or does he say Argentina fielded an inexperienced team as well? Whatever the case may be, is the merit of this game then just to get game time on the clock and actually make 1 or 2 final decisions about, I'm going to go with Jean-Luc, or I'm going to go with Evan Roos.
Yeah.
Is it Dweber? Is it Dion Fourie? Can I accommodate both? Is Andre the Giant out of the mix and the other utility players have to play 12? Do we put someone on standby for Pollard now? Who is that person? So there's a lot of questions to be answered, not necessarily because they don't know who their best players are, but because of form, injury, and then obviously defeats. And defeats make a big difference.
Bingo, absolutely.
You know, and the one thing that the world was saying last year when we were playing well at the end of their tour, and more so in that last game against England, the All Blacks were being crunched, but they had a better win record rate than we did, and we were lauding our team, giving them a B out of as a mark, and they were getting a C.
And they were wringing their hands.
D minus.
Yeah.
They're now unbeaten in 10 matches and have built that kind of thing. But I do find I can definitely see who their second tier players are. Where with us, I've got some serious doubts about who's first cab off the rank and who's second cab off the rank, just based on how we want to play and form. Your prediction for Saturday? I'm putting you on the line here. It's early in the week, but let's get it out there.
I haven't seen the Pumas team.
Do you have to?
I love the Boks. If Checker doesn't go with the C team, I say Argentina win this thing by 6 points.
And if he goes with the C team?
I give the Boks a 2-point win.
So it's going to be close. Do you see this one unfolding a bit like
I just hope it's watchable, because on the weekend that 4-hour test was agonizing.
Yeah. Well, look, let's hope that my electricity doesn't go this weekend.
Mate, you may actually wish it had been late.
But it may be that I take a sledgehammer to that TV at one stage. Thanks, Zels. A pleasure. We'll wrap it up with the Bledisloe dead rubber again. Should they play the second one when they can't win it? As someone wrote, Ian Foster, I was never going to lose the Bledisloe on my watch. So 21 years in succession. There are 21-year-olds in Australia who have never seen the Wallabies hold that Bledisloe Cup.
100%, mate. Hey?
That's incredible.
Eddie said the maths was wrong. Apparently it wasn't.
It wasn't wrong at all. So both sides are going to make a lot of changes. This will be a real hit out in a ding-dong. I still think New Zealand will have too much in Dunedin, but it won't be by much. I've got them to win by 10 points as well.
I think that's a good
10
shout.
is the number for me this week.
I like it.
And thanks for tuning in. And I hope you share our passion for the Springboks. But yes, we're also allowed to be a bit pissed off when we see performances like that, because I'm sure the players will be as annoyed as we are, but as passionate supporters, and Zals and myself who get to commentate and write about the game, if we weren't passionate, then what's the point?
What's the point?